disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. So here's a little thing from Press TV that they released, and this is kind of revelating. So Israeli military used U.S. aid Pier as part of Nusret massacre. That's that horrific massacre that just recently occurred where they wiped out communities within the region and massacred people by the thousands. And this is the humanitarian aid that America provided to bring people to Gaza, food and water and necessities, that now Hamas kind of was on the right side to say that, oh, well, this was actually being used by the Israelis to counteract that. Which, by the way, the whole military aid process, for those who want to know, is kind of a bit of a scam. Because when you look at how the money is being transferred from countries to countries, it's not transferring to the people of said areas that are afflicted. They're actually transferring to the governments. Then those governments create the contracts that get sold to military contractors, these international corporations, and then money flourishes on the top and doesn't go to anybody else. So, just kind of a side note to that. But this goes on to say Israeli forces carried out the massacre against the Nusret refugee camp on Saturday, killing hundreds of Palestinians before they retrieved 4 Israeli captives. According to the Credo online news magazine, the troops were then flown out of Gaza via the U.S.-built Pier, which had been reinstalled on the coast on Friday, after undergoing tens of millions in repairs. At least 210 Palestinians were killed and more than 400 others injured when the Israeli military carried out dozens of airstrikes against the besieged territory and means of enabling the captives' retrieval. The regime's forces directly targeted civilians, including children, during a barbaric and brutal aggression against the Nusret camp, Gaza government media office said. The operation came during the genocidal war that the regime has been waging against Gaza since last October. At least 36,801 Palestinians, mostly women and children, have been killed and 83,000 others wounded in the war that has launched following a retaliatory operation by the Palestinian Territories resistance movements. The brutal military onslaught enjoys unreserved military and political support on the part of the Israel's regime Western allies, including the United States. Prior to the operation that targeted Nusret, the Palestinian resistance movement Hamas had repeatedly warned that the floating pier was built to deliver weapons to the Israeli regime. The pier is intended to provide cover for Washington support for the occupation with the weapons, Hamas said last month. So it turns out they might have been on point with that. That they might have been cautious to people, saying that this random pier from the United States isn't actually good for humanity. But surprise, surprise, America doing something generous for other people in other countries? That's kind of hard to believe. But luckily, I feel safe now that America was just doing its normal routine of providing weaponry to massacre more people. Good job on us. And do you want to know how the Western Hemisphere, the mainstream media covers this? Because this was on Press TV. But here's how CNN puts it together. And this is how headlines really deceive you. Because they put it as an Israeli operation rescues 4 hostages and kills scores of Palestinians. Scores of Palestinians. Well, you know that common saying goes that in order to save the very, very few, we have to massacre a lot. Scores of Palestinians. You can't even numerically figure that out. What is a score? What is a score? I now have to go to the Lincoln Library to figure that out. Who the hell would understand what a score is meant in this context? But that's how CNN wants to write this story and deceive people because they think that, well, we saved 4 hostages, but we don't know the exact number of Palestinians that got massacred in this, so it doesn't really matter. Because if we actually gave a number, then people might go, "Oh, wow, we killed that many people just to save 4? That's a little crazy." I don't even know. So, is a score like a dozen? Is that like, well, wait. If you think about Lincoln's speech, 4 score and 7 years, that's crazy. This is that term. Those scores of Palestinians. Of course, CNN would put that in context. Of course, CNN would use that as a headline to try to deceive people to make Palestinian lives worthless. You know, just like they do with other people, just like they've always done with war. It's the war manufacturing regime at work, ladies and gentlemen. Always make sure that other people's lives are delegitimized to the people that you want to save that are helpful and beneficial to the status quo. So this guy really points it out. This guy, Arnold Bertrand, he says, imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and Palestinians stormed on the Israeli detention center to free 4 people, many of whom held without charges, and caused 610 Israeli casualties in the process. Would the front pages of all the world's papers lead with images of the 4 happy, reunited Palestinian families as they do today for the Israeli families? You know the answer. There's a fundamental bias in how human lives are valued. And quite honestly, that kind of reminds me of when back in the day, so maybe, 20 almost 20 years ago, when they used to write headlines of how horrific the invasion of Iraq was when it came to the soldiers, the American soldiers that they deployed over there, and we were killing by the hundreds and almost to thousands of people that sacrificed their lives, which it's horrific. Casualties that we sent overseas for this war that never really made sense, never really dawned on people why we're doing this. We were just told to do so because we were lied at the masses by these evil croutons within the government. And yet, at the same time, they never really revealed until really the Afghanistan papers came out many years later um, how many ordinary casualties we have caused in the process into stopping Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden and terrorist groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS. They never really revealed the true numbers of the full casualties in part of this war. And they do that purposely to, again, delegitimize the situation, to manipulate people to so that people reading this at home, they're looking at this going, well, it can't be that bad because we're saving 4 people. We're saving certain amount of people. Just like how they wrote back in the day of the casualties of the American soldiers, which again, it's horrific as you look at it, but they never look at the full specter of things. And they don't want people to look at the full specter of war, because when you look at the full specter of war, you kind of understand the point of war, of why we're doing this and why this needs to stop, and where people are starting to call it out. And because they don't want the wars to stop, they want continuous warfare. That's what Julian Assange always reminded us when he did his reporting. They have to purposely undermine you through the headlines, and that's why CNN will resort to, historic Lincoln era Civil War, phrasing that no one in today's generation, not even grandparents in this generation, would understand what they mean by this. I'm very confused. I almost have to figure this out. And just how crazy this is. I don't know. What is a score? Oh, it's not letting me do it. What is a score? Okay, I don't want, no, I don't want, okay, let me rephrase that. How many is a score? Okay, so according to Google, they said a score is 20. So is that like a baker's dozen of scores of Palestinian people? Because I know for a fact it was more than 20 people in casualties overall. And that's scores plural. So again, the fact that they're trying to hide this, it also reveals a lot. So nice try, CNN, but we see right through this. We see right through this headline because I've seen, video coverage. We have covered all the stories we have been investigating throughout this. And the fact that they're trying to deceive people through this headline by using, out of touch wording on this is hysterically hilarious, and just shows how they're deceiving people to disregard the lives of Palestinians in the hopes of protecting Israeli Zionists that they serve master to. Just, again, as the other guy said, imagine if that was the other foot. Imagine if that was Palestinians doing that to save their people. Imagine the change of story, the change of headline that CNN, MSNBC, ABC, the Washington Post, the New York Times, CBC, CTV, Global News here in Canada. Imagine the kind of stories they'd be publishing. Imagine the turn of phrase that would turn around to be. And tell me how biased that would be for Palestinians if the shoe was on the other foot.